Hey guys, I want to welcome you to the concept of leverage. Leveraged our residual income, in essence, in summary, has brought in right at $3 million to our household over the past few years. And it's a concept that I was introduced to later in my adult life, and it's kind of misconceived at times. And often enough, I encounter many individuals who, when they look at leveraging income and shifting, I'm going to show you a cash flow quadrant in just a minute as well, which is again, it's not taught in high school, but in the financial world, it definitely needs to be taught, and it's taught more and more. I'm going to be sharing some concept as well from an author, a gentleman. He's an amazing teacher and mentor as well. His name is Robert Kiyosaki. He's written many books. The last name is Kiyosaki, Kiyosaki, from the cash flow quadrant to business of the 21st century, which happens to be the business that we've been in the past couple decades, and as well as books on real estate investing, all kinds of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and some great concepts that are timeless and, again, simply need to be taught. All right, so the first concept I'm going to share with you, if you're not familiar with it, it's called the cash flow quadrant. And the first stats here, by the way, just going into this presentation, I'm not a big numbers guy, but if I can visualize the numbers and it's simple, it's kept very simple, then I get it, and hopefully I'll be able to share it with you. Here's a couple stats that were just huge to me, that when I heard them, it just said, wow, people need to hear these numbers. Okay, so first of all, guys, here is the cash flow quadrant, all right? And it's, see if I can write big enough for you. So it's E, S, B, I. Hopefully you can see those numbers. In this case, E stands for employees, which I think you'd probably agree or know that the majority of individuals earning an income, working a job, and on the planet, much less in any country you're watching this from, is in this category here, in the employee category. And right below that, so employees are working for someone, all right? And they're typically, I'll show you in a minute how they're typically on this side of the quadrant is linear versus leverage, and I'll introduce that concept in just a moment. But also, some individuals take the next step and they go into the S quadrant, which is self-employed. So they don't want to answer to an employer. They want to be the employer, for example, but they're still, in most cases, still trading time for money. And over here, let me just fill this quadrant out, and then I'll explain the difference here. Over here is you have the business owner. All right, where you take ownership of a business. This person over here isn't always leveraging, it really hasn't gained the leverage yet of a business owner, okay? And then here you have the investor who has, X number of typically cash or resources, etc., or they're investing in property, whatever that is, but they have initially some kind of liquid asset or cash asset that will enable them to become the investor in the first place. All right. Here is the numbers that totally kind of blew me out of the water when I heard them, and I think it's gonna really surprise you if you haven't seen these numbers. And I'm referring to my notes. I'm not a numbers guy, but I'm just relaying the information. I'm excited about this. So here are the numbers. what do you think? So the majority of the individuals working, receiving a paycheck, okay, on this side of the quadrant, what roughly would you think is the percent of the population when it comes to on this side, on the left side of the quadrant? It's a big number, guys. Let me get my right pen here. A very big number. And the number is 95%. So we're talking 95% of our population finds themselves on the left-hand side of the quadrant. Okay? How many would you think, what percent of our population out of every 1,000, there's 950 over here, you can do the math, so it's 5%. Only 5% of our population can claim or find themselves in the right-hand side of the quadrant. That's simple. Most of us would guess these numbers. 95, yeah, the vast majority of our people that we see on the street or in an office, whatever, they're over here, employee or self-employed. They're employed by the business owners, and often the investors, if they're, a lot of times they're employed by both, and a lot of the investors own the businesses, okay? But again, 95%, 5%. Here's where it gets somewhat shocking. All right, here it is. Guess what percent of the money? So if you look at all these people's, their assets, their bank account, versus assets over here. Guess what percent of the money? It's basically flip-flopped. Here's where it gets crazy, and here's where I was shocked. Let me start over here. We're talking business owners and investors. They have in their assets, okay, it's 90, it's not 50%, not 60, 70, it's 90%. 95% of the asset or money, property, etc. is controlled by, owned by, enjoyed by the investors and business owners. 95%. But it's only 5. Are you guys getting this? It's these numbers were crazy to me. And so again, all of these people, 95%, take 10,000 people out here, 9,500 of them are employed, self-employed, but they only control 5%, or only enjoy, if you will, only 5%. I don't know about you, but if 95% of the abundance, again, just to be real here, a lot of times I shy. Can I be transparent for a moment? Is that okay? I really had to work on this. It was tough for me at one point to even begin to talk about money. Maybe you guys can relate. I grew up in a wonderful family, incredible parents, blue-collar household, and money was something my mom and dad talked about, and sometimes emotionally charged at times, but it was something the adults did. So I was never taught any of this, and I grew up and ended up in the healing arts as a massage therapist, and some people would call that kind of hooey-fooey, whatever you want to call it. But it was part of, to me, it's the essence of healing. But long story short, I viewed the whole money world, the financial world, the numbers, as for somebody else who was really tied up into material accumulation, the next bigger house, the next bigger car, etc. I had admittedly a lot of baggage around understanding money. I had to really work on myself and realize that, number one, we need more abundance-minded and integrity-based, in our case faith-based, leaders who have resources to do good with. And so I had to really work on and understand more money and how it works before I could even receive more abundance into my life and business. So I just want to create a side note there. If you find yourself still having a little baggage around abundance, wealth, etc., then I have some resources to share. I'll post some below. But again, where does the leverage happen? So over here, these individuals are clearly found a way to leverage their time and in so many cases leverage their income. They found a way to create assets. So the income over here, a key word, let's see if I can find a space for it. I want to make it big enough. Let me delete this for a moment. So the key concept here, guys, is right here. It's explained right here. All right? So on this quadrant, the majority of the planet, their income is what's called linear. Linear is tied to a timeline. They work, it's linear. This timeline here, to extend this up. Okay. These individuals, employees and self-employed, they're typically, it's linear. They work X amount of time or hours for X amount of dollars. Pardon me, I forget what the current minimum wage is. I think it's around 9 something, plus close to 10 hopefully. But anyway, so they're maybe the more gifted, talented employees or even self-employed, they may have certification, some licensing, some degrees, etc. And they can increase that linear amount to 20, 30, 40, etc. Cash per hour, dollars per hour. At one time, one of the reasons why I went into massage therapy for 15 years, I was an employee first. I worked for some different health clubs, athletic clubs, along with a couple spas. And again, one reason I did, because that my linear income was, once I split it, made 35 or 40 dollars per hour for an hour massage, but there was the setup time, the breakdown time, so it didn't correlate exactly to that, but it was a nicer than some of the minimum wage positions. So I was attracted to that. And then eventually I began to set up my own shop. I got the certification to do this, and I worked from home. So if I made $60 for an hour massage or $90 for an hour and a half, that was what I earned, minus my equipment and oils and rent. So anyway, so that was linear. But there was only so much we can do as an employee or self-employed. We could work more hours, maybe get some overtime in, but it's tough to leverage this type of business or this type of job. So that's why only 5%. Only 5% of the money's over here, because there's no leverage. So over here, the key word, which is what I titled my whole slide with earlier, is leverage. Leveraged, or another term often enough that I love, is residual. In some cases, passive. All right. So, what does leverage mean? There are several quotes out there, and I'm going to roughly quote one of them. You give me a long enough lever, and I can move the planet. Okay, I forget who, maybe Aristotle or Einstein, whoever quoted that. But the point is, leverage is taking X number of time and multiplying that. So leverage in the business owner world, I just got off the phone with a friend of mine who they own a restaurant. The way they're business owners, and again, they're in that quadrant over here, and they're opening up another restaurant, which is a different genre and niche, but it's in the food service business, and that's the way for them to continue to leverage their time, and they want to keep leveraging more and more time. They're leveraging multiple businesses, and they have people, employees, self-employed, overhead, rent, etc. So they do have the infrastructure and what it costs to maintain that brick and mortar structure. But again, they're business owners, and they are more leveraging themselves through the business, through employees, etc. Okay. The other type of business owner becomes more of the investor, where they get the business rolling, get the right team in place, and then they kind of back up and open multiple businesses. Okay, they become more the investor. A lot of investors invest in, as I mentioned before, real estate, properties, other businesses, etc. So that's the leverage income. To open up a restaurant, using my friend's example, typically several $100,000. They're a new business they're opening. Tremendous. Again, they love it, and it's an expertise they have, so they're enjoying it. Okay, but the true residual is not so much. They are leveraging it to a point, but it's not a true residual passive type of business at this point for them. Investors, one of the attractions of investing is you put your asset to work, and then what you invest that in, you build up more and more equity, whether it's property, other businesses, etc., and it can compound for you too, and then you can earn more and more. The challenge with the traditional way to move to that right side of the quadrant is what? What is the primary challenge to move over here into the leverage aspect? It's where's me a dollar sign? I don't have it written down here. It's this right here. It's money, and it involves risk because you're investing it in sometimes an unknown proposition. But most people, because again, only 5% of the money's over here, and your linear trading time for money, it's very challenging for the employee or self-employed to build up enough resources to invest in a traditional business or a traditional investment scenario. And that's one reason why one of the most powerful ways to leverage yourself is through the asset of people. There's a way, and a proven way, and a fun way, and you can see I'm pretty biased, but my next video is going to explain to you how it doesn't take a big asset and having a bunch of cash available and basically no risk to get on this side of the quadrant as a business owner. And it's somewhere between business ownership and investor, because you're an investor because you're building an asset, which happens to be a sales force and a customer base, and you're also a business owner, but without all the overhead and infrastructure and headache of a normal traditional business. And that's why I said at the beginning of the video, my wife and I, with basically hardly anything here, like $150, or I write it $200, we leveraged roughly a couple $100 into a $3 million asset over time. So, and into an asset of roughly 21,000 people. And so I'm going to share that with you in a following video. But are you guys getting this? Look at the numbers once again. 95% of all the population is in this quadrant, but it's only, darn it, it's only 5% of the money. That's crazy. 95% of the people, but only 5% of the wealth, all right, and the resources. But then over here, it's only 5% of the population, only 5%, because they are the ones who employ the people and support the self-employed. Majority of it's obviously right here. And then, but it's only 5%, but it's 95 crazy percent of where all the money is. That's just ludicrous. When I heard these numbers, it just woke me up, and I was in shock. And I was so grateful for the fact that there is, thank goodness, 60, 70 plus years ago, that some very creative, entrepreneurial-minded individuals found a way through, at the average person with very low-end investment and capital, or basically anything, could actually begin to leverage and build an asset which could actually supersede a lot of these investors and business owners with a huge cash asset through building the equity and asset of a trusted, integrity-based organization of people helping people. That's the beautiful concept. So anyway, so I just wanted to introduce you to the numbers and show you where most people are and where most of the money is, and it's a very small percent of the population. Again, the good news is there are some answers. So again, guys, I'm going to put a couple resources below here, and wherever you see this video, on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. And yeah, I just had to share this with you. And I'm going to be sharing more concepts like this with you as we move along. But subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hopefully we'll be able to connect. I'd love to hear your comments and the journey you're on. We're here to help, and we're here to serve. It's our belief that really God created us to serve other people. And this is one way we can serve, is to give back. And one way we can give back is to educate individuals like yourself watching this on possibilities and realities. Take care. God bless.